Welcome back to another episode of Two Marine Dads, where we talk about the journey of life, politics, kids, and family, as seen from the perspective of two United States Marines.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whenever you are. Welcome to Two Marine Dads podcast, episode 15. John and I here, we're going to dive into HR 1319, the American Rescue Plan Act, as you've probably seen in the news. And give our take on it. We're going to give you a little bit of facts. We dove in. We read the 242 miserable pages of this thing and references. And we didn't memorize it, but we picked out some of the big stuff that jumped out to us that is notable. And we wanted to share with everybody. The reason this kind of really jumped out to us is Kamala Harris had a statement about, how awesome this bill was and giving Joe Biden credit for the, lifting generational wealth out of,
intergenerational.
Yeah, for lifting intergenerational impact on poverty and some blah, 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 blah. But here's Kamala Harris. You can hear her for her own words.
Joe Biden made this happen, and it is a very important day for the children of America, for the families of America, for the small businesses. It is a very important day in terms of what we are now going to be able to do to make sure that everyone has access to the help they need. I know people call this a stimulus package, but in so many ways this has been about relief. People are just trying to survive, and I give full credit to Joe Biden because this was his vision, and he really put a lot of work and thought into this to do what this will do in terms of intergenerational impact. Lifting half of America's children out of poverty, it's a big deal. So thank you.
Yeah, so that was Kamala Harris talking about the intergenerational impact of this bill and how it can lift half of America's children out of poverty. The biggest question I have is how are you going to lift anybody out of poverty with one $1,400, stimulus check?
Yeah, not $1,400 a month.
One
check. Here's a check, and
$1,400.
Your grandkids aren't going to be poor because we gave you a check,
or your great grandchildren aren't going to be poor because we gave you a check. Oh wait, no, just kidding. We're going to give you $2,800 if you're married. So, and then after that, if you have another child, we'll give you another $1,400 per kid. But guys, anybody out there with kids who's understands, a budget realizes that that's barely 1 month's worth of costs.
And we're not trying to say that this money isn't going to help people.
Yeah.
And I think it. I'm drawn on this with government support, right? With my principles and the way things work. But we live in a world now where the government can take your job away, which is what they did. They shut businesses down and they told people they couldn't go outside. So they took people's job away. So because of that, they're responsible for people now. Yeah. I don't like that fact. But I think, unfortunately, that's the fact that a lot of places in this country are sitting in right now. Because of that, these checks are needed for folks. There are folks out there that are hurting.
Of course.
I'm going to get my checks, and I'm not going to send them back for free. I don't need them, but...
It's your money. It's my money.
Figure I'm getting the check. I just as well use it, and I'll use it to do something, grow business and things like that. But
at the same time, you're not going to be able to sustain your way of life,
right? And for Kamala Harris to say it's going to be, an intergenerational impact is a joke, and it's big words and fancy words, and the slobbering dog lap media or lap dog media is going to be all over it and think she's the greatest thing since sliced bread, except that's white, so maybe we can't say that, but. Right now, the biggest problem is that this bill isn't the smallest portion of this bill is the checks for people. You get into everything else that's inside of this thing, and the debt that it's going to pile on. And by no means is this a Democrat problem. The Republicans and Trump did a horrible job the last 4 years with the deficit. Yeah. They grew it too.
Donald Trump spent $4 billion, just over $4 billion in under a year on this whole program.
A lot more than that.
Yeah. Well, there were two stimulus bills, and they added up to about plus all the ancillaries that weren't the stimulus package to go fight this thing.
I guess the point that the U.S. debt right now is $28 trillion, right? And that doesn't even include this $1.9 trillion bill. And that's what this bill is $1.9 trillion. And you can go look at this on the debt clock. It's kind of a cool little website. Cool, but depressing. It's got on there that at $28 trillion, each taxpayer owes $224 $100,000. So
that doesn't include all the taxpayers, the people who get more back every year. So
yeah, that's saying each taxpayer, right? So there's a lot of people that pay taxes that don't actually pay taxes. Right. So the numbers vary year to year, but you can say 50% and be good. It's actually, some years it's 51, some years it's 54, some years it's 52. But generally, 50% of the people out there essentially on the rolls don't pay taxes, because even though they pay in taxes, their tax refund from the federal government is more or equal to what they pay.
Correct.
So essentially only the top half of the people really pay federal income tax anyways.
So really, the reality is $448,000 is owed by every taxpayer who actually pays taxes.
Right.
So I guess if you're married, maybe that you can split that with the wife.
Yeah, but the idea that this isn't generational wealth. This is generational stealing.
Yes, it's generational
debt. My grandkids are going to be paying for this debt at this point, assuming that the country even exists and the debt even still exists. But you know, when John and I look at this, and it sounds super partisan, and yeah, maybe we're better off than others, and yeah, we have a biased opinion to it, but the bill to me doesn't look like it's necessary, right? Maybe on this scale, and maybe a smaller one was necessary, or a more targeted one. I mean, for the most part, the country as a whole, the country is recovering economically. The economy of the country is recovering. You know, on the extreme end, you have states like South Dakota that have a 3.1% unemployment rate.
Right.
That's nothing. And the economy's once things open up, the economy's very likely going to come roaring back. You know, for the most part, everybody's spending all of this money on debt. They're just paying off their credit, which is great. They're paying off their credit cards. They're paying off other debt, and they're doing stuff like this. It's not that there's a lack of money in the system. It's just there's nowhere to spend it right now because everything's closed. Right. And the sad thing is this bill's going to come, or this economy is going to come roaring back, and the Democrats are going to claim because it's this bill, and this bill had nothing to do with it. This bill didn't cause the economy to come roaring back.
No, it was the last 4 years of the previous administration putting things in position and changing the tax code, which would make it a lot easier for businesses to hire, et cetera. You know that.
Yeah, I mean, think about where the economy was.
To it. Right.
Think about where the economy was prior to COVID.
Right. Yeah, through the roof. 3.1. Unemployment was everywhere, not just in South Dakota.
Yeah, the United States, with the whole country,
the whole country. Yeah, it was the record low unemployment since the history of the United States.
Since like the 40s or something.
Since everyone, that included, every race, every color, every demographic, if you will.
And it kind of, the way this bill is written is kind of shitty too, because it just has these big pots of money with no accountability to them, and they just go to these big bureaucracies that get to use them however they see fit.
Right.
And
it incentivizes.
Has nothing to do with COVID. And things like, basically it's saying, okay, there's $169 billion in this bill, which is less than 10% of the bill, right? Which is $169 billion is still less than 10% of the bill. Is going to be divided by the states based on their share of total unemployment. Now, this is such bullshit because you have states that have very poorly managed the COVID pandemic. And I don't care what the media said. New York and California have done a fucking horrendous job of it.
Yeah, Oregon, Washington State.
These states that have massive unemployment levels are going to get bailed out now with unemployment benefits all the way through September. Yeah. When right now, I mean, even the Biden administration came out today and said they want a targeted date of May 1st that all states have vaccines available to everybody. And once you have the vaccine, this virus is dead. It's gone.
Right.
And that's not just hyperbole. That's not making shit up. Once you have the vaccine,
you're good.
It's gone.
Yeah. You can't contract it nor give it to somebody.
So now, basically, you have a big federal slush fund where we're bailing out states that were run absolutely horrendously. They're not going to face any consequences. The politicians aren't going to be held accountable now because the states are going to do just fine.
Because they're not going to feel it.
And they're going to maintain these horrible policies that ran them into the fucking ground in the first place, i.e. California. Right. Looking at you, California. Hello, California. Are you on fire yet, California?
Yeah. What's his name? Gavin
Newsom's getting recalled. And it breaks down even further from there.
Yeah, you got $130.2 billion goes to cities based on the population.
Right. So now you've got $169 billion that goes to the states, and then on top of that, so the state government's going to get of each state's going to get $169 billion based on their share of unemployment. Gee, which states have the highest unemployment right now?
New York,
California, Delaware.
Well, are they going based off the population pre-COVID or after COVID? Because people fled from New York like rats from a sinking ship.
But on top of this, now you've got another 130 billion that's going to go to cities based on population. So now you have a state that gets this big influx of billions of dollars.
Cities and counties.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's right. Cities and counties. So, like, let's say there's like
Jacksonville.
Right.
Jacksonville is the county and the city are the same.
Right.
Do they
Or
get
LA.
double?
Or look at LA. Right. You've got LA County.
Right.
LA County is going to get its share of 65.1 billion. But then LA is going to get its share of 65 of another 65.1 billion. And that's absurd because now you're literally taking money from the rest of the country and sending it to failed states.
Oh yeah. Well, it's
In the truest sense of the form.
I mean, you're not really considering the homeless population in San Francisco or the fact that they need to have, safe spaces to shoot up heroin. Oh, did I say that out loud with my outside voice or inside voice? But yeah, I mean, then specifically to cities that are over or counties that are over 50,000 people, get the most
it's
money.
emphasized. It's more emphasized if you're of a city over 50K. So screw all the rural environments.
So if you're rural and you have like Bozeman doesn't have 50,000.
Yeah, I think we're
right about 50.
I think we're over 50 now.
So okay.
But Belgrade isn't.
Yeah, Belgrade sure as crap isn't, and we could use the money there, but yeah, like that.
And it's not like we were talking about how the vaccine is going to end the pandemic. Essentially, it's not just hearsay. It's an unpublished study, so I guess you could take it with a grain of salt. But it's not really neat. It's true. It just hasn't got that official published moniker yet,
or it hasn't gone far enough through.
And it's a study in Israel.
Yeah.
And the reason Israel is important is Israel has the highest vaccination rate of any country in the world.
Yeah, they're about 90% now, 88, 89%.
So their studies are pretty solid on what they can look at with their population. Plus, the way their socio status and the way their country functions is people are more willing to give information, right? Americans are real cagey about their private information. Other countries, not so much. Israel being one of them. They share with the government. They know it's part of their duty. Anyways, the study found that depending on the area, that the vaccine reduced the spread of the virus between 89 and 94%.
Right, and it stopped
and completely stopped hospitalizations.
And down to like what, like a tenth of a
there was
percent
hospitalizations, but there were so few of them
small,
that they're statistically immeasurable. There's no way to determine if it was because they went to hospital because of COVID or something else.
Right.
So the idea that
statistical rounding error, if you want.
That we're going to need this huge. This is the biggest of the stimulus packages they've done so far, by far the biggest.
Oh yeah.
And they didn't do it until now, after everything's getting better. And part of that's because they're buying votes, right? And it reminds me of this quote from Alexander Fraser Tytler, and he's an old school historian, academic type. And he says, a democracy will continue to exist up until the time that voters discover that they can vote themselves generous gifts from the public treasury. From that moment on, the majority always votes for the candidates who promise the most benefits from the public treasury, with the result that every democracy will finally collapse due to loose fiscal policy, which is always followed by a dictatorship. Now, this quote's a couple hundred years old, so there's been a lot that's happened between now and then, but I try to think back, and Zimbabwe, Venezuela,
Rome.
Well, yeah, Rome was before him. I'm talking between when he wrote this and that.
Well, that's what he's basing off of, all these
before him, it was proven true, but it's happened since he said this, and he's been dead and turned to ash and dirt long ago. And I've talked about this since Obama's election in 2008.
Yeah.
It was people won't vote against Santa Claus.
No. Why would they? It's not in their best interest. When someone offers you $1,400, say, here you go, look what I gave you. I'm going to raise you out of abject poverty, you and your kids. And you go, yeah, that sounds good because you've already got one hand in the cookie jar, taking state benefits now. This is icing on the cake. You can go buy whatever you want with it. Why wouldn't you go back to that and say, yeah, I'd like some more. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's the next thing we'll get into here is kind of explaining what you're going to get out of this bill. What is this bill giving each American, right? And it's not each American. You have to qualify.
Yeah. So if you make under $75,000, you are under $80,000, you get $1,400. Unless you're married,
$75K and then $150K married. If
you're married, right? So if you're married and you're making $150K. Less than $150K, you get your $1,400 or $2,800 if you're married. But after that, you get zero. So the people who are making the most and paying the most taxes get the least benefit, don't get a benefit at all. It goes to the other people. And arguably that should be the point. But I mean, if you're spending the money on it, it seems like you should be able to have some sort of, you should be able to get something back from the government that you're giving money for.
It's coined as if you're getting a check from the government, right? The government's giving you a check. Oh, it's the government. They've got the money. Well, in reality, what this is,
our money,
is wealth redistribution. And obviously, I don't like that. But
it's not
even arguing the merits of wealth redistribution, and basically the government playing Robin Hood in their fucking mind.
Yeah, but Robin Hood stole from the rich. These people are stealing from the guy who's swinging a hammer down at the construction site. Like middle class guys who are driving trucks.
The problem is it's not explained to people like that. Right. They don't realize that this $1,400 check is coming from that guy over there.
Right.
And his taxes. He's working. It's going to the government. The government's paying all of its dipshits that can't even tell you what direction is north without doing 40 pages of paperwork.
Can't tell you the difference between the moon and planet Mars.
They're going to take their piece of that guy's paycheck, and then they're going to cut somebody else a check and say, "Here you go. This is from me. I'm giving this to you."
Right. Even though that's not how it worked. They took it out of my pocket and put it into somebody else's pocket.
So basically, if you make less than 100, if you're filing less than 150K a year, you're going to get $1,400 for you and your wife, and then $1,400 for each of your kids.
Right.
So if you're like most American families, wife, husband, 2 kids, you're going to see $5,600.
Yep. So all in all, it's not. That's not going to lift anybody out of poverty. That'll pay a bill.
It's not a small amount of money.
That'll pay.
It'll cover a couple of months of expenses,
yeah.
maybe.
Yeah, some car payments, stuff like that. But
maybe pay off the credit card bill that you've been living off of for the last 2 months because you haven't been able. But what are you going to do after that?
Because the Democrats made you wear a damn mask and shut the economy down. I don't know.
Canceled Keystone and the
and can anybody? Canceled Keystone. When you said that earlier, I wanted to key in on that. When you were like, "Hey, they have the power to take away your job." They literally do. They can be like, "You're going home." And but run me through this. If you get the COVID vaccine, why would you wear a mask, Biden?
Yeah, you look at this. You see all these people that have definitely gotten the vaccine and have had it for months.
They show them on TV getting it.
But they're still wearing their mask. And the bullshit story is, well, we want to encourage people mask wearing. No. You want to encourage people to get the vaccine. Because right now, that's a problem. It's an actual serious problem in minority communities and inner city communities.
That I'll buy.
They're scared of the goddamn vaccine. And they won't get it. And now you also have young adults who are like, wait, I get the vaccine and I still have to fucking wear a mask and I still have to social distance? Why the fuck would I get the vaccine?
Or if you've already popped positive and already contracted it,
why should I get the vaccine?
Why should you get it? It's like
nothing's going to change if I get the
vaccine.
You're still wearing a mask. You're still acting like an idiot.
Right. If you've gotten it, you shouldn't have to wear a mask.
Ben Shapiro put it. He's the president houseplant.
President houseplant with his picture with his hands.
But Sorry, you want to encourage people to get the vaccine. So if you have the vaccine and it's safe, and maybe because Biden's old and crud-mudgeony and can barely survive a day without his dog tripping over him, he needs to be more protected. He's the president. But that's not the case. The argument they're making is
not for COVID. He needs to be protected for a myriad of other reasons, but not because of COVID.
Food tester from Kamala.
That I don't wish that on anybody, but you're right. Like, the guy's lost.
I mean,
upstairs. He's lost.
I was watching Nancy Pelosi, Schumer, and I can't remember what is the other dipshit's name. He's the Democratic House Majority Leader. I can't remember his name. No, that's Senate. But they were all 3 standing there giving a press conference, and they're wearing masks. 2 of them not fitting properly. Schumer had one that was something about save our restaurant. It looked like a NASCAR sign on his face, and these huge fucking gaps on the sides, and barely hanging over his nose. But he's been vaccinated.
Why is he wearing the mask?
Exactly.
Right? Same thing with Pelosi. Same thing with all of them. Why? And I get why they got vaccinated. They're the I don't know. Probably they should be.
They 100% should be vaccinated.
You know what I mean? But
I don't like Nancy Pelosi, and on a personal level, I think she's an evil person. But she's still a Speaker of the House,
right? And she should be.
She needs to be fucking vaccinated.
Number 3 in line. Yeah. But I mean, there's other things inside this bill that have absolutely nothing to do with COVID in any way. You can't look at it and say this has something to do with COVID. So I mean,
no, but it sure does fit into the modern era of race reparations.
Oh yeah, reparations. This is what we're about to go over, guys. Is the equivalency of 40 acres and a mule from 1866 or whatever. right after the Civil War was over.
It's racism.
But it is
It's
absolute.
racism.
This is racism. That was called reparations, and this is some sort of rendition of that. But you can get money if you're a farmer and you fall under the socially disadvantaged clause. And by socially disadvantaged, that's defined as anybody, to include African American, American Indian, Asian American, and Latino farmers and ranchers.
Let's dial this back a little bit. The USDA has tons of. I mean, the USDA is one of the biggest bureaucracies in the U.S. government that forks money out everywhere.
Oh yeah,
and supports farmers all over the place. And most farmers,
food stamp, SNAP, all that.
Yeah, well, but on the farmer side, all the benefits the farmers and get, and the tax rebates and all the other stuff, and so farmers have access to the USDA regardless of their race or color, right? But what they're saying here in this bill is that if you're one of these disadvantaged groups, which is basically a race, that's all it is if you belong to a race, you're automatically assumed you're disadvantaged. Not only are they going to cut you a check,
but they're going to cut you a check
for your debt. So if you owe $100, they're going to write you a check for $100. Just because they're nice, they're going to throw an additional $20 on top of that.
Right. So if you're
the bill's written to be 120%.
120% of outstanding indebtedness of each socially disadvantaged farmer. No joke. Like what Tyler's saying, if you owe $100, they'll pay 120 of it off for you. So you can go home with an extra, again, talking about buying the vote. There you go, right there. It ain't idle gossip, it's in black and white. This passed. This is law. Or this is a bill that's passed.
It's also the quintessentially reparations at the end of the day, right? Because just because you could be the most successful black farmer. Let me dial it back even lower. You could be the most successful farmer in Nebraska, but because you're black, all your debt gets paid off. If I'm a Hispanic farmer, you know what I'm doing? I'm gonna go buy every fucking brand new piece of farm equipment I can find. I'm gonna buy 6 fucking horses that I don't need, and write.
I have a loan for this,
and then take a fucking check. And you know what's gonna happen? Every bank knows that they're gonna get fucking paid off in a month or whatever it takes to do this process. They're gonna cut the checks, and they're gonna give all this money out to all these farmers. They're gonna have all this shit they don't need, but only because they're a race.
And only because the government's stupid enough to pay them for it,
I don't know. It's stupid.
Well, yeah, I guess, and they're buying a vote. I guess that is quite smart, actually. But again, there are other things in this in here too beyond just the farmers. But I mean, you got like loans for improving technology concerning food, and this is going into like the SNAP program.
Yeah, and there's stuff in here that's legit causes, but has nothing to do with COVID.
Right.
It's pet projects.
Right.
And when you get
buying new PCs, what does that have to do with?
And you get into the stuff about race and stuff, and it brings more back to the front and center, which for some reason this quote is debate. It's under debate now what this quote means. To me, it's pretty plain as day. When MLK Jr. said, "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." And I to be 100% and make sure I had the quote down right, I had to Google it. The first article comes up as a dissertation on how what we think the quote means doesn't really what it means. What the hell?
It's pretty straightforward. Pretty straightforward.
Like when people argue about the wording in the Second Amendment, sure, I get you, because it's written in 250-year-old speak, and the shit doesn't make sense anymore nowadays. The way we talk bad American, but this is plain as day. This is clean. This is there is no way to misinterpret this or go around. We are not judging people by what they do and what they achieve. We're judging them by
what they look like,
and it's the racism of low expectations.
Right.
You have low expectations for somebody because they're different color.
You're saying a black farmer can't successfully run a farm,
right?
Like literally. And if anybody's been on a farm, I grew up on a farm, and I'm sure not all of them are this way. I know the ones in Florida are this way. It is a rainbow coalition there. There is you're hard up to find more than one person that looks the same as the next guy,
and every one of them's up to their fucking elbows in hard work.
Yeah, and hard work. At the end of the day, they're all equal in the sense that they're all trash from head to toe, dirty, right? So the idea that based on everyone works hard, based on the black guy has a harder time at farming than the white guy. It's what does the hail skip his farm and only hit the white guy? Like it's garbage.
Exactly, and that's the problem is because there's going to end up a case here where you're going to have
a drought skips the white people and goes to the black farm.
You're going to have a Hispanic farmer who doesn't need help from the government. He's doing just fine, but he's going to get a big check. And his neighbor is white, who barely can feed his kids, and is probably going to the bank for a loan just to pay for next year's crop because this year's got wiped out by hail.
Right.
He's not going to get anything. I mean, he will because
when he walks through the door, he looks.
He's not
pale.
going to get the same.
Right.
He's not going to have the same benefit as the Hispanic farmer.
It just in the bigger sense
so
of the
wrong.
world,
It's just
so
wrong.
When you look at like what is it, Bloody Sunday, when there was a march, through what was it, Birmingham, and there was like the state troopers showed up with nightsticks. They sick dogs on these black people,
fucking
and
fire hoses.
fire hoses and all that. These people fought to end this garbage.
Everybody talks about
And
fire
here
hoses,
we are.
and that's one thing, right? Fire hoses are not fucking squirt guns. If you've never been hit by a fire hose before, it feels like somebody's ripping your skin off.
It hurts. You can barely hold on to the damn things. But anyway, I digress. But these people fought to get away from this, so everybody would be looked at just by, oh, hey, there's a guy, when he opens his mouth, I'm going to see what his soul looks like, type of a thing, and not judge him by what he looks like. And now here we are putting it into law that you will look at these people differently than you will these other people. It just fucking blows my mind.
And it's encouraging bad behavior, right? And same thing with the SNAP program, right?
Yeah.
So the SNAP program for whatever reason, inside the COVID bill, now we've got stuff with food stamps.
Yep.
And it's going to throw a bunch of money at states based on their share of households that are
participating in the SNAP program.
And on top of that, it gives them a bonus, essentially. Bonus might be the wrong word for it, but the more they increase,
the more money they get out of this bill. Yeah.
And not like one for one, like it's a bonus. Like it's like a sales bonus.
25% of the money will be allocated to states based on their increase.
So
in the number
if one
of households.
State increases more than the other, it gets a bigger share.
They get a big check. So the politicians sitting up in Capitol, the guys in Tallahassee,
will be pushing people.
Will be pushing, going, "Hey, do this, so they can get more money." I'm not saying they will. I'm saying
no, they 100% will. This is exactly
Yeah.
what happened when the welfare program started.
Right.
Old quote again. We've kind of got a thing full of quotes here, but I love old quotes, especially because of how much they can ring true now. Ben Franklin talked about the best way of doing good for the poor is not making them easy in poverty, but leading or driving them out of it. Right. You shouldn't make poverty easy. Yes, it sucks to be mean to somebody who's impoverished, but if you make poverty easy, you suck more people into it, which is worse.
It's worse
than being hard on somebody in poverty to push them out of it.
Right. Well, work is a 4-letter word, man. Period. It's hard. It sucks. Work is not easy. But the benefits, oh my God, when you have, we've talked about it before, when you have a purpose in life or whatever, you actually feel and look and hold yourself better, But I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but there's other things in here too that are just not crystal clear, guys. I looked at this next thing we're about to talk about, and I was like, this is nonsense. Why are we spending money on it? And Tyler looked at it and was like, no, this makes perfect sense. If it means what he means, or if it means what I mean.
Yeah, it depends on your interpretation.
Yeah, your interpretation of it.
And it's not like it's clear. It's not like it's open to it's open to interpretation. It's not like you go look at the line and it says this is what the money will be used for. But it basically just says the United States is going to give $905 billion to the Agency of International Development for Global Health Activities. $905 million. Sorry, right. And this is going to be in response to the coronavirus, which shall include a contribution to multilateral vaccine development partnership support epidemic preparedness. Right. Now, I read this way because I saw an article today, a news article that talked about the tech. So if you're not aware that the way the vaccine was developed for the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine,
it's new technology.
It's brand new technology. Before these two viruses, this shit only existed in university labs.
Right.
And it's what allowed them to spin up the vaccine so quickly. It's also what makes it have to be stored at Pluto temperatures.
Right. That's why it's
super unstable, right?
That's why the vaccines go bad if they sit too long.
Right. And so what I read this as is this is further money to further that technology, because they're saying now with the track that technology is on, that the next pandemic that shows up, they can have a vaccine inside of 100 days.
Right.
So think about that. This thing broke loose in February, March. So by summertime, we've got a vaccine, which means before Christmas, everybody's hunky-dory, and this thing doesn't ever actually get out of hand.
Right.
And people, if that's the case, if that's the facts on the ground, people are going to be willing to fucking completely lock down and isolate and keep this thing from spreading, because it's like, oh shit, 100 days, everybody's good. And during that 100 days, you know, people are going to start getting vaccinated and being better and all this, that, and the other. Whereas, you know, when we started this thing, it was, 15 days to flatten the curve. And then it turned into 3 months. And then it turned into, you know, we're going to be in this till 2021, according to Fauci, which, you know, now he can't even explain why when you get the vaccine, you shouldn't fly. But
or you can't take off your mask.
Right.
But I read this and I was like, we've already done this. Donald Trump, you know, put this plan into motion. That was one of his first things he did back in the summer of last year. You know, was to dump money on top of this. I was like, we've already paid for this. Why are we doing it again? You know, so it's like, where's this money actually going?
And we don't know.
When I first read it, I was like, why are we spending it on it again? Like these systems are in place.
John and I, neither one could figure out exactly, because there's nothing that spells out how the United States Agency of International Development has to exactly spend this money.
Right. You know, another one is, and this blows my mind too. $3 billion with a B this time, 750 million,
$3.75
billion dollars goes to the prevention and treatment and control of HIV and AIDS. How many rubbers is that going to buy?
In order to prevent, prepare for, and respond to the coronavirus. Wait a second. Let me reread this.
No, this is the coronavirus. It's HIV and AIDS.
Let me read the statement.
That's its own virus.
This doesn't work. The Department of State to support programs for the prevention, treatment, and control of HIV/AIDS in order to prepare for, and respond to the coronavirus.
What?
Wait, did somebody fucking copy and paste the wrong words in here?
What if you...
How do you go from the start of the sentence talking about HIV/AIDS funding to the coronavirus?
Tyler, you just don't understand. What happens is AIDS connects with the coronavirus. You have Rona.
Does that make bad AIDS?
I don't know, man. It means that the AIDS virus has to wear a mask, is what that means. I have no fucking clue, guys.
You don't need to wear rubber. You don't need to wear rubber for AIDS anymore. You just wear a mask.
If you're like, baby, I got corona. That's cool. So they cross cancel or whatever that means. We spent billions of dollars on it though, so it's cool. You got another $3.5 billion for the Global Fund, again, to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. I mean, I get those things are bad, but they already have their own funds.
I mean, I
guarantee they already have their own funds.
I want somebody to explain to me that this makes sense. Like, I want somebody who knows what's going on inside these organizations to go, no, actually, this is for this. It's not just a boondoggle so some politician can say they got money for something or other. This actually has an effect on COVID-19. Like, it's part of it.
Like, run me through.
I swear.
Connect them. Connect the dots.
We might already have a vaccine, but, this is part of it.
I mean, there's certain things that I would never think that are connected that are, and you look at it and step back, and once somebody explains it, you're like, okay, I get it. This, run me through how TB, malaria, that you get from a mosquito has anything to do with... Anyway, all right. So, we've been down that road.
Yeah, malaria is not even a fucking virus.
It's not a virus? It's bacteria? Well, I didn't know that.
That's why you take fucking medication for it, right?
Remember those ones in the Marine Corps? Remember those Marine Corps?
Yeah, I just gave you shits for fucking weeks, dude.
Oh, those big pills. And then you can't give blood for
I'm going to feel like a dumbass. I'm looking at it right now, but I'm going to fucking feel like a dumbass. I'm almost positive it's not a virus.
I feel like it's a virus, but maybe...
It's caused by a parasite.
So it's a parasite, okay, yeah, and which is miserable. I'd rather take the drugs and get that. But here's the other thing, too. You got $100 million for OSHA. All right, and come from the construction industry, that means one thing to me, but actually, this is for training and for first responders and teachers and doctors. I totally get it. Why OSHA would have $100 million in there, but then you find out that half of that will be allocated to workplaces, and to include poultry processing facilities. I don't understand how that has to do with COVID.
I've got it figured out, John. So, legit, like, the pandemic that was going to end the planet, like, they made movies about it, was the bird flu, right? So
right.
Since now we got the bat flu out of the way, now we got to worry about the bird flu.
Right, got it. Whoever ate the bat, man. So, again, guys, there's a lot of stuff in here that has absolutely nothing to do with the coronavirus,
or treating it, or preventing it, or fixing the faults and wrongs of it.
Right. Yeah. No. Very, very little in there. Most of it is going to other states and whatnot, like we just described. But within this bill, there's another program, an entitlement program that's kind of like welfare. Again, that actually gives you a $300 check per child. So like
regardless of wedlock,
regardless of whether you're married or not, and this
regardless
is
if you have a job,
reminiscent of what was ended back in the 80s, right?
No, started in the 80s, ended in the thing that it's Clinton when the Welfare Reform Act they changed a lot of this, right? And
so that would be the 90s,
basically you're creating another entitlement here, and we all know how hard entitlements are to get rid of. They're not hard; they're impossible. Once an entitlement is instituted, it becomes a third rail of politics.
How do you cut it? Yeah,
and they'll be like, "Oh, there's a sunset clause," blah 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 blah. Well, if you look at the way the sunset clause is structured, basically it's not really a sunset clause. They will be able to maintain it without having to pass another bill. Basically, they have to vote it out to make it go away, which probably isn't going to happen.
Right? How are you going to?
And kind of rolling back to what our fearless Vice President Kamala Harris, Miss Harris. Is it Mrs. Harris? Miss Harris? Blowjob Queen. What is it that we call her?
Heels Up Harris.
My
buddy Dave calls her.
Whatever she says about generational picking people up out of generational poverty or whatever it was. The problem is it doesn't matter how much money you throw at welfare. This is a proven thing. The war on poverty, if you want to call it that, the Great Society, starting with LBJ, has had zero effect. In fact, poverty has gotten worse in many communities since they've instituted it. It hasn't helped. Doesn't matter how many trillions of dollars they've dumped into this. And at this point, we're in trillions of dollars a year that they dump in. And it doesn't help. So throwing more money at it isn't going to help it.
No.
And
it's going to make it worse.
But again, we're at a point where politicians are Santa Claus now, and they've realized this. And they realize the more they give, the easier it is for them to get reelected. And it boils into this: elections have consequences, guys. And John and I talked about the Georgia election before it happened.
Oh, yeah.
And what the possible outcomes of it were. We didn't see this one coming. We talked about some of the other stuff, but with even one of the Georgia Senate seats had been held, this bill wouldn't have passed. Right. And you can whine and complain about the Georgia elections being stolen or funny business or shit not making sense or them not counting votes, whatever. That doesn't matter. At the end of the day, the local elections matter, and you can affect them.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, even if you want to say the Democrats did cheat and they didn't do what they were supposed to, they didn't play by the rules, or they changed the rules so late in the game that it wasn't illegal, but it wasn't fair and it's unconstitutional, but it doesn't matter now because nobody will see the court case.
They're telegraphing that from a mile away. You should be able to pick up on that and then react in the
right. And even if they did cheat, they still have to beat while they're cheating, and not by cheating ourselves. You don't beat somebody cheating by cheating, because then the whole system just collapses on itself. You have to have overwhelming wins. You have to convince people that our argument is better and our way is better. And like I said, it has to be an overwhelming win to the point to where any kind of election shenanigans can't affect the outcome anymore, because then they won't happen. They won't risk the shenanigans if they can't affect the elections. Right. And you can say it's possible because look how Trump won. Right. There was an unbelievable amount of shenanigans during his election. And I don't mean necessarily like vote tampering, but with the media and everybody else trying to do everything they did
within our own party
to sink Trump. Yeah. The Obama administration spying on the campaign.
Within the Republican Party itself,
the people, the never Trumpers,
the Canes and
the Lincoln Project now, who apparently was led by a giant pedophile that everybody knew about and just turned their heads away from. But
it was cool.
Those guys are fucking. Those guys are a great fucking role models.
Role models,
but. And that's kind of, I guess, we want to end it there and wrap it up and just emphasize to you guys how important local elections matter.
They do.
And how much of an effect they can have. We have a new $1.9 trillion in debt on the table. Now, it's there. It's passed. It's signed. It's a done deal.
Yep.
And
the people who ran
all
their
because
states,
of the Senate election.
Right. And the people who ran their states the best are now paying for the states that didn't. The people who allowed places like Chaz to pop up are getting billions of dollars, while people in
South
Dakota aren't. Right. So, but anyway, guys, it's not all doom and gloom. Our Republic has withstood worse than this.
The point was just to give you guys some knowledge about what's in this bill, because you're not going to get it from the media. The media is the only thing the media talks about, as far as I can tell.
This is how much money you're going to get.
Is how awesome the $1,400 check per person you're going to get is.
This is so great. Yeah.
And how evil rich people aren't going to get it. And,
Right.
you know, there's help for minorities. And, you know, this is to help, you know, fund the coronavirus rescue effort that Trump failed at. Never mind the fact that he got a vaccine done faster than anybody in human history.
And then poured gasoline on the fire of this new technology, which catapulted it. And that, you know, to all these people who are like, well, the government shouldn't be spending money on projects or whatever. If it wasn't for the government, you would never have this technology. You know what I mean? It wouldn't be where it is now.
It's that quote in
If
Iron
Donald
Man.
Trump, you know,
the quote in Iron Man. And I'm not going to get the quote 100% right, but that super hot news reporter comes up and gives him a hard time about military. You know, it's easy to say from the guy that comes with all the sticks, and he's like, you know, what about our IntelliCrops and our medical systems and this? All that's military funding, baby. You know, it's true.
It is true.
The
It's very
government
true.
does have a place, and John and I will never argue that it doesn't, but it has to be held accountable.
Oh, it has to be held accountable and throttled back for sure. But,
And that's not happening here.
No.
But
all right,
anyways,
guys, you have a good night. And,
everybody, appreciate you hanging out, listening to the podcast.
yeah,
and
like and subscribe, guys. Like and subscribe. We want to hear your comments, good, bad, or indifferent. We want to hear what you have to say.
that's what helps out on the YouTube algorithm the most is
Yep.
comments and likes. Subscribes help too, sort of. But we want them anyways.
Yep.
Thanks, everybody.
Semper Fi. Good night.